Pennywise and the turtle are cosmic entities. For years, readers wondered if Pennywise was just an exceptionally powerful monster or something far more ancient. Turns out, it's the latter, and the scale is staggering. In It, King confirms that Pennywise isn't from Earth. It crash-landed here millions of years ago from a place called the Macroverse, a dimension that exists outside our reality where cosmic beings dwell. This isn't just another planet, this is beyond our universe entirely. Pennywise's natural enemy is Maturin, the turtle, an ancient being who created our universe. Where Pennywise represents consumption and chaos, Maturin represents creation and order. They're cosmic opposites, fundamental forces locked in an eternal struggle that predates humanity by eons. The theory that they were more than just monsters was proven when King explicitly connected them to the Dark Tower mythology. They're not random creatures that happen to be powerful. They're servants of higher powers, agents in a war that spans multiple realities. The Losers Club and the Turtle saved reality. Fans theorized that defeating Pennywise wasn't just about saving Derry. The stakes felt bigger than one town in Maine. They were right. During the Ritual of Chud, Maturin reveals to Bill Denbrough that Pennywise is a servant of the Crimson King, a force trying to destroy the Dark Tower and collapse all of existence. If Pennywise had won in Derry, it wouldn't have stopped there. It would have spread, consuming more and more, until the very fabric of reality began to tear. When the losers defeat it, they're not just killing a monster, they're closing a wound in reality, preventing a catastrophe that would have affected every world connected to the tower. The turtle guides them because this battle matters on a scale they can't comprehend. Without Maturin's subtle intervention, the losers would have just been terrified children with no chance against something that existed before time itself. With the turtle's guidance, they become something more, unknowing guardians of the tower, protecting reality simply by defeating what they thought was a local threat. Randall Flagg is he who walks behind the rose. Randall Flagg appears throughout King's work under various names. The Walking Dude, the Man in Black, Walter O'Dim. He shows up in The Stand, the Dark Tower series, Eyes of the Dragon. He's Chaos incarnate, a servant of the Crimson King working to tear down the tower. Fans theorized for years that Flagg was also the entity in Children of the Corn, the demonic presence called He Who Walks Behind the Rose. King essentially confirmed this through consistent patterns and connections across his books. Both entities demand child sacrifices. Both corrupt innocence and twist religious faith into something monstrous. Both operate through manipulation rather than direct confrontation. The parallels are too specific to be coincidental. He Who Walks Behind the Rose is another face Flagg wears, another manifestation of his influence. The Corn Cult in Nebraska is just one of many horrors he orchestrates across different realities, all while working toward his true purpose, destroying the Dark Tower. Flagg doesn't limit himself to one story or one world. He moves through King's multiverse like a plague, spreading chaos wherever the tower's influence has weakened. The cult in the cornfields is barely a footnote in his larger plans, but it shows how widespread his corruption truly is. Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne happen simultaneously. This theory seemed too specific to be anything but wishful thinking. Two completely different books with different characters, settings, and plots, but fans noticed something. Both feature a solar eclipse at the exact same moment, described from two different perspectives. The fans were right, and King even confirmed this. Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne take place simultaneously during the same eclipse, in locations close enough that both characters experience the same cosmic event at the same time. In Gerald's Game, Jessie Burlingame is handcuffed to a bed, hallucinating, confronting the trauma of her childhood abuse. In Dolores Claiborne, Dolores is using the eclipse to cover up her husband's murder, pushing him down a well while everyone's distracted by the darkened sky. The eclipse connects them across space. It's not just a visual callback or a stylistic choice, it's King showing that his stories exist in the same universe, happening simultaneously, influenced by the same cosmic events. The eclipse itself might be significant beyond just timing. Some fans theorize it weakens the barriers between worlds, making both women vulnerable to supernatural influences. Whether that's true or not, the Simultaneous timeline is confirmed canon. Two women, two separate horrors, one eclipse linking them together. Cujo the dog was possessed by the same force as Christine. Cujo is a Saint Bernard who gets rabies from a bat bite and becomes a killing machine. That's the surface explanation, and for most readers, that's enough. But fans always felt something was off about how intelligent and focused Cujo seemed during his rampage. King later confirmed that Cujo wasn't just rabid. He was possessed by the same malevolent spirit that inhabited Christine, the 1958 Plymouth Fury. It's a force that latches onto objects and animals, turning them into instruments of death. Both Christine and Cujo show remarkably similar behavior patterns. They're relentless, seemingly intelligent beyond what they should be, and they target specific victims with an almost predatory focus. The possession explains why Cujo doesn't just attack randomly. He traps the Trenton family in their car, stalking them with purpose, the same way Christine traps her victims. The entity doesn't have a name or origin story, or that's what the average fan thinks. It's simply malevolence seeking a host. Whether that host is a vintage car or a family dog, it doesn't discriminate. It just wants to kill, and it'll use whatever vessel is available. So Cujo wasn't just sick, he was haunted, possessed by something that turned his protective instincts into murderous obsession. It makes an already terrifying situation even worse when you realize the dog wasn't in control of his own actions. 7. Christine is possessed by Roland's world. Christine isn't just haunted by a random evil spirit. Fans theorized she was connected to Roland's world, the reality where the Dark Tower exists, and King confirmed this through careful references in later books. The car's behavior, her jealous, obsessive love for Arnie, mirrors the way Roland's world operates. In that reality, emotions have tangible power. Love can bind, hate can kill. Obsession can literally reshape reality around itself. Christine doesn't operate on our world's logic. She follows rules from a place where inanimate objects can feel, where the line between alive and dead is thinner than we think. She's a fragment of the Prim, the magical chaos that existed before the tower imposed structure on reality. The connection becomes clearer when you examine how Christine rebuilds herself. She doesn't heal. She resets, returning to her original state, no matter how much damage she takes. That's not how our world works. That's how Roland's world works, where Kay and fate have weight, where things can be undone if the universe wills it. Christine is evidence that Roland's reality is bleeding into ours, that the boundaries between worlds are weakening. She's not following the rules of physics. She's following the rules of a dying universe where magic still exists, and objects can hunger for human souls. And if Christine comes from a world where magic never really died, it raises an unsettling thought. What if some of Stephen King's monsters were never meant to lose at all? Across his universe, not every story ends with evil defeated. Some horrors walk away untouched. And if you want to see how dark those endings really get, watch When Stephen King Monsters. Win the most disturbing endings of his universe right after this video, because once you notice who survives, the entire multiverse feels a lot more cruel. Now, moving on, the Mist monsters escaped from the Todash void. The Mist unleashes interdimensional creatures on a small town but never fully explains their origin. Fans theorize they came from the Todash darkness, the space between worlds mentioned throughout the Dark Tower series. King confirmed this through later connections and references. The Arrowhead Project, the military experiment that causes the Mist, tears a hole between dimensions. That hole doesn't lead to another planet. It leads to Todash space, the void between realities where things that shouldn't exist gather and wait. The creatures aren't aliens in the traditional sense. They're things from between worlds, from the cracks in reality where the tower's protective influence is weakest. They exist in spaces humans can't perceive, in the gaps between dimensions, and they've been waiting for an opening. The Todash darkness appears in multiple King works as a place of absolute horror, where sanity doesn't apply, and the rules of reality break down completely. The military didn't just open a portal. They breached a cosmic prison, releasing things that were kept separate from our world for good reason. Insomnia directly connects Derry to the Crimson King. Insomnia was always one of King's stranger books, dealing with higher and lower beings, purpose and destiny, fate and cosmic balance, and all that jazz. Fans theorized it was directly connected to the Dark Tower, specifically to the Crimson King, and, well, King confirmed it. The book reveals that Derry sits on a weak point in reality, a thin place where the barriers between worlds are fragile. The Crimson King has agents working in Derry, manipulating events to destabilize the tower and bring about the collapse of all realities. Ralph Roberts gets caught in a cosmic battle he doesn't understand. His insomnia isn't a medical condition. It's his latent ability awakening, allowing him to perceive the true nature of reality and the forces trying to destroy it. He can see the auras, the different levels of existence, the agents of chaos working in the shadows. The book also shows the deadlights hovering over Derry, directly connecting Pennywise to the Crimson King's forces. It confirms that Pennywise isn't an isolated monster. It's a soldier in a multiversal war, weakening reality from within while other agents work elsewhere. Insomnia transforms Derry from a cursed town into a strategic location in a war for existence itself. It explains why so much horror concentrates there, why the barriers are so thin, and why evil seems drawn to that specific place only. Pennywise fears The Shining. Characters with The Shining have psychic abilities that let them perceive beyond surface reality, and seem to have an advantage against supernatural threats throughout King's work. Dick Halloran, Danny Torrance, even members of the Losers Club show hints of these abilities. The theory was that Pennywise fears The Shining because it allows people to see through its disguises and perceive its true nature. King confirmed this connection through Dick Halloran's role in Welcome to Derry. Dick uses his shining to penetrate Pennywise's defenses, getting inside its head and acting as a circuit breaker for the Deadlight's influence. He can see what it really is, which means the entity can't hide from him, can't use its usual tricks of fear and manipulation. The shining reveals the truth, and truth is Pennywise's greatest weakness. The entity relies on perception, on making victims see what it wants them to see, on controlling how they understand reality. Someone with the shining cuts through all of that. They see the cosmic spider beneath the clown mask. They see the lies for what they are. That's why Pennywise avoids people with strong psychic abilities when possible. They're not easy prey. They can fight back on a level most humans can't access. And for something that's existed for millions of years feeding on fear, encountering someone who can see its true form is genuinely dangerous. Rose Red is the Overlook's sister. Rose Red, the haunted mansion from King's miniseries, felt familiar to fans from the moment it appeared. The way it fed on death and trauma. The way it grew larger with each victim. The way it twisted everything inside it into something corrupt. It operated exactly like the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. The theory developed that Rose Red and the Overlook are the same type of entity, possibly even related. While King never stated this directly in the text, he's acknowledged the connection. Both are living structures that feed on psychic energy, growing stronger with each tragedy they absorb. The Overlook consumes violence and pain, expanding its influence with every murder and suicide within its walls. Rose Red does exactly the same thing, physically growing larger as it feeds on the deaths and suffering of everyone who enters. They're not just haunted buildings, they're parasitic entities disguised as architecture. They lure people in, feed on their trauma and death, and use that energy to grow stronger and more dangerous. They're predators that look like houses, wolves dressed as shelter. Whether they're literally related or just the same species of horror doesn't really matter. The pattern is clear. King has written multiple stories about buildings that eat people and grow from the feast. Once you recognize that pattern, you start wondering about every haunted location in his work. How many are actually alive? How many are feeding? The number 19 connects every King story to the tower. This theory started with obsessive fans noticing that 19 appeared constantly throughout King's books. Addresses, dates, ages, page numbers. It showed up too often to be random chance. King confirmed it was intentional. The number 19 is cosmically significant in the Dark Tower mythology, representing the structure of the tower itself and the multiverse it supports. 19 is sacred, a fundamental constant woven into the fabric of reality. Every appearance of 19 in a King story is a marker, a sign that this story is connected to the tower, whether the characters know it or not. The Stand features 19 letter phrases at crucial moments. IT takes place in Derry at coordinates that reference 19. The Shining's room 217 reduces numerically to 19. Not to mention that King started creating his universe at the ripe age of 19. Besides that, King went through a traumatic life-altering accident on June 19th, 1999. This is just a way for King to weave his own life stories into his intricate universe, adding another layer of depth to this multiverse. It appears everywhere once you start looking, and it means that even King's smallest, most isolated stories are part of the larger mythology. The tower's influence and King's attention to detail extends to every corner of his multiverse, and 19 is the signature it leaves behind. The Dark Tower connects everything. This is the foundation, the theory that every other theory builds on. For decades, fans wondered if King's books existed in the same universe. The recurring characters, the crossover references, it all seemed deliberate. Then King wrote the Dark Tower series and made it explicit. Everything is connected. The Dark Tower is the axis of reality, the structure that holds all worlds together. Every King story exists somewhere in relation to the tower. Every monster, every hero, every tragedy is connected to its fate. When the tower weakens, all realities suffer. When it stands strong, all worlds are protected. Randall Flagg serves the Crimson King, working to destroy the tower. Pennywise weakens reality from within, creating cracks and thin places. The Overlook, Christine, the creatures in the mist, they're all symptoms of the tower's deteriorating structure. Evil leaks through the cracks. Roland Deschain fights to save the tower, and every other King hero, whether they realize it or not, fights the same war from their corner of reality. The Losers Club, Dick Halloran, Paul Sheldon, they're all protecting the tower by resisting the darkness in their own lives. The Dark Tower doesn't just connect King's stories, it explains them. Every haunting, every possession, every inexplicable horror traces back to the tower's weakening. The multiverse is dying slowly, and we're watching it happen one story at a time. All things serve the beam, all stories serve the tower, and every Stephen King book is another chapter in the same epic, whether the characters understand it or not. And once you understand that everything serves the tower, Another question becomes impossible to ignore. If all these creatures exist across the same multiverse, then some of them are far more powerful than others. Pennywise, Flagg, the Crimson King, forces older than time itself, but which one truly stands at the top? To see how every creature compares across King's universe, watch every monster in the Stephen King universe ranked by power, because once you measure them side by side, the hierarchy of horror becomes terrifyingly clear.